honeybees, my name is Raven, this is Eden, that's Jasper, and welcome back to our channel. Subscribe to become part of the hive. Be sure to like and ring the notification bell. Thanks, honeybees. Enjoy the video. Meow. Hi everybody, welcome back to a new video. I am reviewing Lisa Frankenstein and Madame Web, two movies that I saw quite recently. One that I enjoyed very much and one that I enjoyed very little. First off, can we appreciate the web poncho that I have. Really, this outfit that I've had for years really came in clutch. I really miss dressing up for videos, so this was really convenient. Let me just go ahead and get right into it. We're going to start with the one that I liked, Lisa Frankenstein. I pretty much knew from the get-go I was going to like Lisa Frankenstein from the trailer. I love the aesthetic, I love the subject matter, the genre. I've always liked Cole Sprouse and Dylan. I like both of them. Cole Sprouse just seems to be in more things nowadays. And I like Diablo Cody. Lisa Frankenstein was written by Diablo Cody. She has, of course, written Juno and Jennifer's Body, both two excellent films. I believe the last film she did was Tully. She's done a few other ones, but Jennifer's Body and Juno, classics, love them. Jennifer's Body has an interesting history of like bombing at the box office but then becoming a cult classic later, and I think that's what's going to happen with Lisa Frankenstein. Juno, I feel like most people agreed was a masterpiece from the beginning, but that one's not anything really like a Jennifer's Body and Lisa Frankenstein other than like the humor style and the dialogue style, just because it's Diablo Cody. Obviously she has a very specific writing style that I personally enjoy and find humorous. It's the kind of humor where you don't actually have to tell a joke for it to be funny. It's witty conversational comedy. And that is all throughout Lisa Frankenstein, but it doesn't suffer from the problem that certain writers have, where they write everybody the same, so everybody kind of sounds the same and nobody has differing ways of speaking, which characters should. Characters are people, each character should be unique. Obviously, characters who are friends or family can speak similarly, but everybody should have kind of their own unique style, as they should all have their own unique personality. That's part of character development, right? And Lisa Frankenstein does not run into that problem. I think Diablo Cody is really good at writing differing yet similar dialogue, so it's all the same style. It feels like it's all in the same universe, its own special little universe, not too different from our own, but not the same. But each character gets their time to shine, gets their shining moments, gets their special things about them, and also the things that make them similar to those around them, which is the opposite is a problem in Madame Web, where everybody kind of sounds the same, but we'll get to that later. So Lisa Frankenstein stars Kathryn Newton as Lisa. Her name is Lisa Swallows. And Kathryn Newton, the only movie I think I've seen her in is Freaky. I'm not sure if she's been in other movies, but I know she played the main girl in Freaky, who switches body with Vince Vaughn. And that was a cute, fun, quirky film as well. I don't remember too much about it. I do like it. It was cute, quirky, fun, just like Lisa Frankenstein. It was similar to that. I like the quirky, fun kind of horror stories. Also, Cole Sprouse as the creature. He doesn't really get a specific name. It's implied that his last name is Frankenstein. On his tombstone, you can see like the kind of end letters. He's been dead for quite some time. Lisa frequents this bachelor's graveyard, finds his grave there, has this sort of infatuation for him, not quite a love. That does develop later on, which was also quite interesting. In terms of the story, I had assumed from the trailer that she was gonna like fall in love with the idea of him, and then when he became alive, they were gonna pursue a relationship immediately, and that's not quite what happened. And actually the subversion of my expectations there was welcome. I thought it was an interesting concept that they didn't just go with like the easy story on that. Their relationship still had to develop. She saw him as a friend immediately as she pursued a different romantic interest and kind of like had his help to pursue this other romantic interest, and then in doing that caught feelings for him as well, and he's kind of pining for her the whole time, and then at the end finally gets what he wants and they are together. Spoilers. I'll say that for both of them, to full spoiler speak in these reviews. Then we also have Lisa's stepsister Taffy, and that's an interesting dynamic. Another thing I liked about Lisa Frankenstein was the interesting family dynamic amongst the characters. Lisa lives with her stepsister and her father and her stepmother over a year prior, maybe 2 years prior to the events of the film, which takes place in, I believe, 1989. It's the 80s. Which also great. I love an 80s aesthetic. I don't think it's gotten old if you do it right. Because what do I want to see, an iPhone in a movie? I don't want to see an iPhone in a movie. We find out about 2 years prior to the events of the film that Lisa's mother was brutally axe murdered in front of her, and then her father kind of found another woman to get married to kind of right away. And so now she has this actually very loving stepsister who's like super popular, super pretty, kind of the opposite of Lisa, who's very withdrawn. She doesn't speak a whole lot. Obviously, she's been through a lot of trauma, and her family, her father especially, hasn't really addressed that at all or let her grieve. Her stepmother is completely unsympathetic, classic evil stepmother trope, but it works really well in this storyline. And her father, he pays more attention to Taffy, his stepdaughter, than he does to Lisa, his actual daughter, because Taffy probably represents everything that he would want his daughter to be: pretty, popular, outgoing, everybody likes her, kind, all that good stuff. And she's the only one who's actually nice to Lisa and wants to include Lisa, which I thought was also really interesting, because you could very easily, on top of the evil stepmother trope, have an evil stepsister trope where she is competing with Lisa. She doesn't want anything to do with Lisa. She ignores her. She actually goes out of her way to include Lisa, lets her borrow her clothes, helps her with her makeup. So I really like that dynamic, because Lisa needed a friend. Lisa needed a friend that wasn't just Cole Sprouse as the dead man coming back to life, because he doesn't talk at all during the movie. And Lisa needed somebody to bounce off to that wasn't horrible to her the whole time. Everybody else in the movie that does speak to her is not quite as nice to her. So it was great to have those two characters together. I thought that was really a really interesting portrayal of step siblings. On to Cole Sprouse. He does not speak until the very last scene of the film. And what's interesting about that I really liked was that when he comes back to life, he doesn't just immediately become human. He's been dead for quite some time. He was dead, and the opening of the film kind of shows a little bit of his history of how he was alive in 1700s, 1800s, a few hundred years ago. He died an unmarried bachelor and was buried in the bachelor cemetery. And this opening sequence is done in like silhouette animation, and I thought that was really cute, a really poignant way to kind of tell his story in a very short intro, and just kind of give us everything we need to know about this guy and where he came from. We didn't need more than that. I harp on a lot of movies for not developing their characters enough, but you can develop a character without tons of like flashbacks and exposition on exposition. You know, you can develop somebody quite fully in very simple ways, or at least develop them as far as we need to know. Like, I don't need to know everything about him. I didn't need to know his name. I didn't need to know anything about his family. I didn't even really need to know much about how he died or any other details about the girl he was with. All we needed to know for this story was that he was alive in this certain time period. He fell in love with a girl, it didn't work out, and then he died. That's all we needed to know about him, and we can kind of develop the character from there just based on what we see him do, and kind of figure out his personality from there, which I also enjoyed. Like, let us figure it out, you know? And that was kind of similar with all the characters. We were able to discover like their personalities and who they are just based off of how they spoke, how they walked, what they said. That didn't have to do with, oh, I really like this color, this is my favorite thing to do. You know, how some writers choose to develop their characters, they just tell us. These characters didn't have to tell us who they were. And his portrayal of this dead man, like I was saying, is interesting because he doesn't just come back to life and he's human again. He's been dead for quite some time, so when he comes back, there's some pieces missing. His skin is still kind of rotted. He very slowly becomes more and more alive as the story goes on, and as he is kind of being put back together by Lisa, hence the name Lisa Frankenstein. He's missing a hand, he's missing an ear, there's a few other things missing, and throughout the film, throughout the journey that Lisa and the creature are on, she kind of helps him put him back together. And I really liked each of those sequences too. Each of those sequences where he's getting a new piece, they have to kill somebody for it. And the first one was set up perfectly. I feel like all the deaths in this movie, all of the like kills, were set up beautifully, set up and paid off. The first one, Lisa kills her lab partner, Doug, who previously in the film, she accidentally drinks a spiked drink. Doug tries to take advantage of her and puts his hand on her breast. And later, when she discovers that the creature needs a hand, she lures Doug into the graveyard and cuts his hand off and sews it onto Cole. And actually, that wasn't the first kill. That was actually the second kill. The first kill was Lisa's stepmother. it was pretty bold of the film, I think, to kill her so soon into the movie. It was set up that the stepmother is not a huge fan of Lisa. She wanted the husband. She wanted the new husband, the new dad for her daughter. She didn't really want the other daughter that came with him. When the creature comes back to life and breaks into the home where Lisa is alone because the rest of the family went to the movies without her, when the stepmother comes home, she accuses Lisa of faking a break-in for attention because she got so much attention when her mom was axe murdered, and just so super insensitive to the point where I was like, yeah, this lady needs to die. Something needs to happen to this lady. And she does. Cole Sprouse ends up killing her after she threatens to send Lisa to a psych ward so that she doesn't have to deal with Lisa anymore. An inpatient, locked up. She even calls her a whore, and the moment that she calls her a whore, I knew, okay, she's about to get murdered, and I'm excited for it. And that's fun too, because the protagonists in this film, Lisa and the creature, they're the protagonists, but they're not necessarily the good guys. We're on their side. At least I was definitely on their side the whole time. But they're doing these terrible things. They're killing people who maybe not all of them deserve to die. But still, at the same time, like, I didn't care. I was rooting for them. I was like, yes, cut off his hand. And later there's another body part cut off. And I was like, yes, cut it. You know, so I thought it was really great that the movie kind of like was able to frame these bad protagonists in this way, where just because it's a protagonist doesn't mean they're the hero, doesn't mean they do everything right. They're flawed completely, but we're still on their side because they're still the protagonist at the end of the day. If a movie is done right, like, we're on the side of whoever is the lead of the film, whoever those protagonists are. Lisa, she did not have any feelings for him in the beginning, but chose to take care of him and treat him as a friend. She needed a friend. She didn't really have anyone she could really talk to. Taffy was kind to her, but Taffy didn't quite understand her, and Lisa didn't feel like she could really open up to Taffy, so Cole was kind of her outlet for that. So all the feelings she was having, she put on Cole, which was great for the audience to know, like, what she was thinking, what she was feeling, what she wanted to do. That was kind of how we got our exposition. But she's crushing on this other guy named Michael through most of the film, and she's asking Cole his advice and telling him about her crush and being very open about it, and he's kind of like picking out outfits for her, and she's becoming more like goth and out there as the film goes on. She doesn't start that way, which is interesting character development for her. I thought Lisa had a very interesting arc of starting out as like the very shy, quiet, traumatized girl, and then finding herself and becoming more confident with help of this dead reanimated body. But then the big climax at the end, we find out that her stepsister Taffy is sleeping with her crush, and she confronts them. As Lisa's confronting them, Cole comes in and cuts off Michael's penis brutally with an axe. And then, of course, he dies. And part of why he did that was because he didn't have one. Cole did not have his own penis. It had rotted away. Lisa sews it on him. And then he is now a complete human. And that's when she realizes that he had feelings for her the entire time, and she finally reciprocates them. You'd think that'd be kind of a weird, happy ending. They kill all these people. They make Cole a complete, alive man again. Lisa has found her confidence. She's got rid of her horrible stepmother. She got revenge on her crush. And then she ends up with Cole, who loves her and gives her all this attention that she didn't get from anybody else. But that's not how it ends. We do get to that point, but then everything catches up with Lisa. You can't just murder people, some of which in broad daylight, all of which in broad daylight actually, with witnesses on at least 2 of the murders and get away with it, which added a bit of realism to this story that I also really appreciated. It was realistic for what it was. Realistic for this universe, I should say, because it's unrealistic for this dead few 100-year-old body to come back to life like this, but I'll accept that in this universe. But it's a little too out of the question for people to just get away with murder, a teenager especially, to just get away with murdering her stepmother and never seeing her again. Obviously, they were going to figure out something weird was going on when people started disappearing and they were all kind of connected to Lisa. Michael gets killed in front of Taffy, so you can't really get away with it at that point. Lisa does get caught, but then she chooses to kill herself to kind of get away with it, and then Cole brings her back to life at the end, and so they are just in love reanimated bodies together at the end. So there is a happy ending. I appreciated that, like, we were given the happy ending that I wanted. I was given the happy ending that I wanted, them ending up together. They're a very cute couple. They had really great chemistry despite the fact that Cole couldn't talk the whole movie. Lisa talking with him and just their expressions and the way they interacted with each other physically, the chemistry was there, and it was really fun to watch. So I appreciated that there were some points that I didn't see coming, that I didn't think of. And all in all, I just really liked how this story played out. I really liked each of the characters. I liked the kill scenes. It wasn't too much, but it was just like frightening enough. It's not like scary. It's not like a scary horror movie. I would still put it in the horror genre, horror comedy genre with some romance in there. But not every horror movie has to be like scary. There was definitely horror elements for sure. And I really enjoyed that, because sometimes just the aesthetic of horror is all you need. You don't need to be scared, right? That's what I think. Speaking of the aesthetic, the whole aesthetic of the movie and the color palette in general really popped. This was a really fun movie to watch. Just aesthetically, what was on screen. The house that Lisa and her family lives in had fun, interesting colors. Nothing was boring to look at. It wasn't boring to watch from a story and character perspective, and it wasn't boring from a cinematic perspective. I enjoyed looking at what was on the screen no matter what was happening. The costumes were great. The lighting choices were very nice and dramatic at times when they needed to be. Nothing was boring. Nothing was flat. It was just all around and a very enjoyable movie. I don't think it's for every audience. I definitely think it is for a very specific audience of people like me that enjoys all of those elements combined in that way. But I think there's something to like for everybody, honestly. So Lisa Frankenstein, I give that movie 3.5 out of 5. The second movie we're talking about, as we switch into hater mode, is Madam Web. Madam Web stars Dakota Johnson as Cassie Webb. If you want someone to delve into the comic portion of Madam Web, look up any other review for Madam Web. I'm looking at it from strictly a film perspective. But from a story perspective, if it was in the comics or not, I do think it's kind of overkill to make her last name be Webb. There's enough like spider stuff in the movie already for it to make sense that her name would be Madam Web, her superhero name would be Madam Web, which they never address her by in the movie, but it's an origin story. But there was enough spider content and web content there, and references to her mind being a web, her powers being a web, and spiders in the Amazon giving powers, that calling her Madam Web made sense. Her last name didn't also need to be Webb, because then what was all the references to the spiders about? Her last name didn't also need to be Webb. That's overkill. That's a little nitpicky thing, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. I just want to get the nitpick out first. I think my main problem with this movie is the writing, and that includes the dialogue and also just how the characters were written and how they were portrayed, as well as the delivery of the lines. It was all of that stuff was very awkward writing, awkward dialogue, delivered awkwardly by the actors, just made for an all-around awkward, bad film. I wasn't going to see this movie because, if you couldn't tell, I'm not super interested in Marvel stuff, superhero stuff, any of that. There's a few exceptions, but this did not seem like something that was going to appeal to me. The only reason I watched it was because I heard from many people that it was really, really bad, but in an entertaining way. Which, if there's one thing I do love, it's a good, bad movie. Those are always really fun to me. So I thought this was going to be bad, but in a super fun way. And it wasn't even that fun. There's probably going to be something in like the title or the thumbnail that refers to this movie as bad fun, but it's not even actually that fun. For some people it might be, but for me, I actually wasn't very entertained for most of it. It's not as eventful as I thought it was going to be. Like, stuff happens. There's fights and stuff like that. But when I say eventful, I don't just mean like fight scenes. There's just a lot of like talking, figuring it out kind of thing, which is normal for an origin movie. I feel like an origin film for any sort of character or hero or what have you, it isn't going to be super eventful because it's all set up. There's a way to do it where it is more interesting than Madam Web, though. Like in the first Spider-Man movie, the first like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, or any of them really, like, yeah, there's some Spider-Man stuff in there, but a lot of it is about like discovering powers and how they work, and it's not just somebody like talking about what's happening, you know what I mean? Anyway, this movie stars Dakota Johnson as Cassie Webb, and I don't know if she was just like phoning it in. There were some parts where it seemed like she was actually putting in effort, and other scenes where it just felt like she was just delivering the line so dead, like she wasn't even trying. The tone of her character was all off, and I don't think that was all her fault. I'm sure there was a lot of directing flaws here, and then like I said, the writing itself was flawed. So it was flawed from the beginning, and then whoever directed it either didn't know how to make it better and was just given something so bad that it couldn't be made better. One or both. But it was all over the place. She was sometimes very like dismissive and sarcastic, like that's supposed to be like her character from the beginning, is she just like doesn't care about things, but also she does care a lot about some things sometimes. So I was kind of unsure about her personality and what she's all about. Like I was kind of unsure of like who she was as a character and what we were supposed to think about her and how we were supposed to feel about her. It was very unclear. A lot of exposition was delivered very lazily. It opens with a flashback of her mother in the Amazon, which is fine to have a flashback. I don't think flashbacks are inherently lazy, but then it flashes forward years in the future when Dakota Johnson's in her 30s. The flashback is when her mother was pregnant with her and when Dakota Johnson was born. And then flashes forward to present day of the film, which is like 2003 is present day of this film. When she's much older, she's like early 30s at this point, and after like the first scene that we see her, she goes home and looks under a box and looks at her mom's picture and says something like, I hope the spiders were worth it. Like, girl, you're still thinking about this? Like, obviously you're still thinking about it, but like you still resent your mom 30 something years later for going to the Amazon when she was pregnant with you. I'm sure there's some resentment there, but it was like just a lazy way to kind of like tell us how she feels about her mom who died giving birth to her. Like, does she do that every day? Does she look at a picture of her mom and ask if it was worth it every day? I don't think so. But that's how we know that she resents her mom for going to the Amazon when she was pregnant with her and then dying. I guess that's really the origin of the spider in Spider-Man at the end of the day. It's like this special spider deep in this forest in Peru. And I guess there's like people in Peru that have been bitten by these spiders, and they are spider people. So there's like a whole colony of spider people in Peru that are also like little heroes, and they save Dakota Johnson's mom and they help her give birth, and then she dies. Before she dies, they try to help her and they let her get bit by a spider, which she's in the Amazon to find this spider because she believes it will have healing properties. And we find out later that she was told by a doctor her baby is going to have some sort of disorder, and they discover that in the womb, so she's going to be born with this disorder. And so she's trying to find a spider to save her daughter, which when Dakota Johnson finds that out, she realizes that she doesn't need to hate her mom. Her mom was doing it for her. So, you know, little character arc there of Dakota Johnson forgiving her dead mom and realizing that she did care about her, because all this time she assumed that her mom hated her because she went to the Amazon when she was pregnant with her instead of like going home and being pregnant to make sure that the baby is safe. But anyway, all these spider people just exist in Peru. And the bad guy, Ezekiel, who is responsible for the death of Dakota's mother, who like shoots her when she discovered the spider. He's like her adventure partner or whatever. He's there to protect her, ends up double crossing her, takes the spider for himself, gives himself spider powers. So now he's his own like Spider-Man guy living in New York where they are. And I guess the spider gives you power to see the future a little bit. And the spider venom that affects Dakota Johnson, I guess, doesn't kick in until she is older. She gets into an accident and she lands into the ocean. She falls off a bridge, and that's when her powers kind of kick on. I guess it's water activated, and she's just never fallen into water before hard enough for it to activate. So now she can see the future all of a sudden. She hasn't up until the point of the events of the film. But Ezekiel has always had these like dream visions of these three girls who are dressed as different like spider women characters killing him. So it's his mission to find these girls and kill them before they can kill him. And that's the threat of the movie. And Dakota Johnson is like seeing these visions of this happening, seeing these girls getting hurt moments before it happens, and so she keeps trying to stop it. At first she thinks it's a future that she just cannot change, and then she realizes that she can change what is in her vision. So there's a whole bunch of different scenes about that. Doesn't really matter. They're all tangled together in their own web. That's like a big part of it. I don't think they had to all be connected to Cassie for her to be able to see that, because she was already connected to Ezekiel through the spider. So I don't think she also needed to happen to know each of the girls, kind of. Which, speaking of those girls, let's talk characters for a second. I already talked about how, like, Dakota Johnson's portrayal of Cassie was kind of weird and all over the place and awkward. But the other characters, first off, let's talk about a character that I like before I get into all the other ones. Adam Scott is in this movie. I was really surprised to see him. I didn't know that he was in it. He plays Ben Parker, the famous Uncle Ben before he becomes Uncle Ben. It's always a delight to see Adam Scott in movies. I love him. He's great. There's one point in this film towards the end where he's wearing like this like dad cardigan, and it just reminds me of how like hot he looked in Krampus. He was such a dilf in that movie. So anyway, Adam Scott, nothing against you. He was kind of wasted in this film, though. They didn't use him all that much, but I was still happy to see him there. He is a delight. The other characters, we got Sydney Sweeney playing Julia, Isabel Merced playing Anya, and Celeste O'Connor playing Maddie. Those are the 3 teen girls in the movie who are the spider women people that Ezekiel keeps seeing in his dreams. Visions of them killing him, but they are not spider women yet. They don't become spider women. They don't get bit by the spider. They don't do any superhero stuff throughout the whole movie. So this is kind of like a pre-origin to them. Obvious sequel bait, because we see them in costume through these visions that Ezekiel's having. So we can only assume in the proposed or planned sequel to Madam Web that they will each become spider women in their own right. But that doesn't happen at all in this movie, which I was expecting it to, at least at the end, but it didn't at all. So I don't know why Ezekiel was having those visions. They ended up not coming true. The only reason he's a threat is because he was having those visions, but those visions didn't even come true. I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't have to make sense, I guess. But the 3 teen girls, Julia, Anya, and Maddie, they're all very much caricatures of teen girls, and none of them are like super developed personality wise. Sydney Sweeney's character and then the girl who played Maddie and Julia, they were more developed. Like, I understood their personalities. I understood them as characters. They were very like over the top versions of themselves for sure, but I get what their characters were. The third girl, Anya, we really didn't get much about her at all, other than she's smart, specifically good at math, smart. There's a few times where she just like busts out an equation in her head, and we learned that her dad got deported and she's living on her own. That's really all we know about Anya. And then the other 2, Julia, she's like nerd girl. That's who she is. She's got the glasses, she's sheepish and shy, she dresses nerdy, she's a rule follower. And then the other girl, Maddie, she's the rebel character. She flips people off and she says sassy things and she laughs at you and stuff like that. Very much over the top. Both are very much a caricature of what they're trying to be. And then Anya just doesn't really have much to her. Honestly, like, I don't even really need to get into the story that much. It just, because it doesn't really matter. Like, my problem isn't with the story, even though the story itself wasn't super entertaining and was a little bit confusing at times, and there was definitely issues there. Really, it's just the writing and the characters. If you don't have good characters, you don't have a good story. Like, the story itself can be fine, but if your characters aren't portraying it well, then it's all around just not fun to watch, not good. I thought I was gonna have fun. I mean, there was a few times where I like laughed at how weird something was said, or just like how blatant certain exposition was. It was just like presented so lazily, and just how strange Dakota Johnson was the whole time in being serious and genuine and being dismissive and everything else that I stated. As she ends the movie, there's like this big fight scene at the end, and she ends up killing Ezekiel, changing what his vision of the future was. And she saves the 3 girls. She protects them the whole time. She's like very big about like not wanting to be connected to people and not wanting kids. And then as soon as she sees these girls are in danger, she does like everything to protect them. And then at the end, it's so weird because she's like, you guys are my family. I have everything I need right here. Just you 3 girls. These girls are my girls. Like, I get that you guys went through a lot, but you've known these girls for like a week. Like, they're not your daughters. They're each kind of alone, and they're like, they each have like problems with their parents, like either not being there or not caring about them. So she's kind of like their pseudo mother all of a sudden, but she snapped into that role of mother very quickly after she was really adamant about not doing that. So that was fast. That was interesting. But also at the end of the fight scene, like when she ends up in water again and gets hit in the face, and I guess it blinds her. So at the very end of the movie, she's kind of like Professor X. She's in a wheelchair and she has these like glasses and she's all like talking differently. She's like, hi, yes, I've seen your futures. You're all brave and strong.
Can you see us in the future?
Yes. I can see you. Nothing I didn't already know.
It's just changed from how she was before. Like, all of a sudden she's this like different weird superhero character. Like, I don't know. It was very odd. It was awkward. I can't say that word enough. The whole thing, all of it was just so awkward and not as fun to watch as I had hoped. That's all really I have to say about Madam Web. I give that movie a 1 out of 5. I wish it was more entertaining. I'm all for a bad movie, but a bad movie also has to be fun and I have to enjoy it. And I just didn't enjoy this one. It wasn't so terrible. Like, I wasn't like mad at it. Sometimes I get so bored I'm angry. I was a little bored throughout it. I was a little uninterested, but I tuned back in every now and then just to kind of be like, what are they doing now? Or to laugh at some awkward line delivery. So it wasn't a super terrible experience. I do not recommend it though. I don't think anyone has to see it. It's not that funny. It's not funny enough where you have to waste your time to actually go and see it in a theater. But Lisa Frankenstein, definitely see that. I do recommend that one. And that's all I have to say about either of these movies. Let me know what you thought about both of these films in the comments. Let me know if there's any films coming up that you are excited to see. I know there's plenty that I can't wait to see. And that's it for now. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Thanks for watching, honeybees. Make sure to like and subscribe. Bye. Meow.